Reform UK have unveiled what they call the biggest welfare overhaul in a generation. Now, this is a proposal designed to slash $50 billion a year from the UK benefit bill by 2030. And the cornerstone of this plan, well, we already know it's scrapping personal independence payments and copying a system used in the Netherlands called return to work cover. Now, on the surface, this sounds amazing. It sounds brilliant. It's like a silver bullet that shifts the burden of long-term sick pay away from the taxpayer and onto employers. But you don't need to scratch much below the surface to see that how the Dutch model works and how Reform intends to implement its version are vastly different, and as soon as you look, a massive financial and legal gap begins to open up. And it starts with a single number that Reform conveniently omitted from their headline figures. So under the Dutch system, which I'm not going to try and pronounce because I'll butcher it, it's known as the WULBZ framework, and employers are legally required to cover long-term sick pay for up to 2 years. But here's the thing, Dutch law forces employers to pay at least 70% of the employee's actual salary. Now that acts as a true safety net. Reform's proposal, however, mandates that employers insure workers for the much lower universal credit rate of around £400 a month. Now that is not a wage replacement, that's just pushing the standard rate of state poverty level support onto private businesses. So why would Dutch employers tolerate paying 70% of a wage when UK businesses are getting a little bit worried about this extra £400? Well, the answer lies in a tax system that's radically different from ours. This is something else that Reform conveniently ignore. To run this heavy employer-backed safety net, you need the public finances to back it up. And in the Netherlands, there's no tax-free allowance like in the UK. So the very first euro that a Dutch worker earns is taxed at 35 to 37%. You compare that to the UK, where the basic rate of tax is 20%, but that doesn't even kick in until you're earning more than £12,500 a year. That just shows you that the Dutch system can afford the huge rehabilitation infrastructure that you need, because the low and middle class earners are contributing significantly more into social security from day one of employment. Reform claims that we can replicate all the shiny bits and get all the lovely benefits of the Dutch system whilst keeping our taxes as low as they are at the moment. But tax is only the first hurdle. What happens when a worker actually falls ill? Well, in the Netherlands, calling in sick triggers a kind of legal machinery. In the UK proposal, it just triggers a load of administrative nightmares. In Holland, an employer doesn't just pay sick leave and hope for the best. By law, both the company and the employee must sign a joint reintegration plan supervised by certified independent occupational health agencies called, and I'm going to have a go at this one, but called the Arbeidsdiensten. If an employer fails to adapt the workplace, they can get fined. Whereas if an employee refuses light duties, then their pay can be stopped. Now, Reform's plan expects British small businesses to offer the same services and pay for it out of a minuscule reduction of 0.2% in national insurance contributions.
You serious?
0.2% reduction. That's what they're going to give them to manage complex health interventions like this, with no centralised occupational health framework. And it's not just the sick workers who are going to be affected by this. The proposal completely dismantles PIP and replaces cash payments with something much more controversial. Now, under Reform's plan, if you can call it that, PIP and the work capability assessment are abolished. Cash payments would be reserved only for those with severe and enduring disabilities which aren't particularly clearly defined, and it would be under a new health security allowance. For anyone else, the cash disappears and is replaced entirely by disability support accounts which are run by local councils. Now, the idea being the local councils can provide equipment, adaptation or services instead of money. And crucially, those deemed capable of partial work could be assigned mandatory community tasks. So things like fly tipping clearance, patching potholes perhaps, emptying bins possibly. And if a claimant fails to show up for one of these work placements, the penalty is unlike anything we've ever really seen before. So failing to participate or showing poor performance on a council work placement carries a sanction of full, non-time limited revocation of benefits. Now, Reform does openly call this a much harsher sanction than previous workforce schemes, but just think about the logistics just for 1 minute, which I don't think they did. Local councils are already struggling. Many have gone bankrupt over the last few years, others are flirting with bankruptcy at the moment. Now, out of nowhere, they're going to be expected to supervise, vet, manage the health and safety of, provide health and safety training, provide work-specific and task-specific training, provide equipment, and then monitor tens of thousands of Workfare participants doing jobs that were previously done by very well-trained and very experienced council employees. Reform suggests that a grant of £3,200 per participant will cover all of this. But I'm yet to see an expert opinion online that agrees with this assessment. And we're not even out of the bottlenecks yet, because all of this assumes that local councils can even get the medical evaluations completed in the first place. Because at the moment, disability assessments are handled by private contractors. Reform wants to abolish this altogether and place the primary burden back on GPs. So under their plan, GPs will be required to gather comprehensive structured medical evidence, they call it, covering diagnosis, severity, prognosis, functional impacts, safeguarding risk. So we're not talking about a GP appointment here, we're talking about a lengthy GP appointment and then a significant piece of paperwork for the GP to do afterwards. And if you've tried to book a GP appointment recently, you know that system is already creaking. Where on earth are the GPs going to find this time? Where? Are we going to get more GPs to do this? None of this is mentioned. But dumping millions of complex disability reassessments onto family doctors creates an instant operational bottleneck that could wipe out the entire projected 50 billion savings on day one. So for the sake of argument and for the sake of the video, let's assume the NHS somehow manages to magically manage this workload and the entire policy still hits an immediate legal brick wall. To enforce some of these benefit revocations and dealing Workfare from standard employment rights, Reform acknowledge that they're going to need to repeal the Human Rights Act and exit the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, I do accept it's perfectly possible for a government to create its own Bill of Rights, its own Human Rights Act, but I would suggest to you that the sort of numpties that we've got at Reform at the moment are not the people who should be writing our new Bill of Human Rights. So this becomes a monumental constitutional fight. Add on top of this that Reform is proposing to cut working age benefits for non-UK citizens. This would involve stripping settled status from potentially over 1 million people, which conflicts directly with the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement. So it's not just a domestic battle anymore. We've now got to renegotiate with the EU. Now, Reform did accept that this was something that would need to take place. What they don't cover is, having spent the last God knows how many years bickering with and about the EU, they seem to think that they are the best people to extract a positive negotiation out of the EU. I don't see any reason why EU negotiators should treat Reform UK with anything other than complete and total contempt. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Independent bodies have looked at this and highlighted major, shall we say, optimistic assumptions. Chief among which being that Reform assume that 241,000 long-term sick claimants will seamlessly transition straight back into full-time employment. They also assume that millions of PIP assessments will go through immediately and swiftly and easily without any legal appeals. In reality, previous attempts by both Labour and Conservative governments to tighten up around these areas saw savings fall drastically short due to huge administrative delays, court challenges, tribunal costs. So they may well have presented what they call a clear vision, but it's one that, just like their Brexit, is built on unicorns.
What about unicorns?
No, unicorns are real.
So is the Dutch comparison fair? The Dutch model proves that holding employers financially accountable can drive workplace adjustments, and it can help people remain in the workforce. So if you look at it superficially, then yeah, that premise does hold water, and the Dutch system is a good one to base it on. However, copying the employer obligations without copying the Dutch tax base and creating that extensive occupational health network that supports the whole project in Holland, it's not copying the Dutch model, it's not adopting the Dutch model, it's creating some kind of half-assed hybrid that will just place an enormous strain on UK businesses, local councils, and even more so on GPs. So my view on this, like everything they do, it absolutely fails the sense check. But let me know what you think in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you didn't, and if you like this sort of thing, please do subscribe. It really does help the channel. And don't forget, let me know what you think in the comments. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.